riding behind her father, and Henry following. They left behind the great looming house where she'd been born, and he was born, and the land where the captain had been born. Henry looked back a last time, and the house seemed to rise and climb the mountain. Still to see were the hanging terraces and curved steps, wet and gray and shining in the vitreous spring light. In switchback turns they made their descent, in the cold perfume of the forest, the white pine, the laurel and dogwood understory, and he could feel in his chest an ache for the increasing density of the air as they descended. Below them, a rising white torrent of runoff smashed through heads of stone. It suddenly disappeared inside the earth, and then was with them again as they traveled its course. Clemmy and the captain rode in silence, neither of them wanting to confront the confusion of their lives and the long histories that Henry didn't understand. But he knew some of it, and it had to do with him and his mother's weariness, and she not married, and the father he didn't know. There were whole days she'd be lost to him, turned inward and silent, and then other days she couldn't contain her restlessness. If they could have, they would have ridden forever, as if riding were their calling, as if they were pilgrims with their holy land always a little farther along the path. They wanted and needed no accounting, as long as there was a length of trail ahead of them and no parting at the end. The captain asked Clemmy if she was ever in the city, for he couldn't recall a time when she was. "Yes," she said, "one time." They were stopped to let the horses blow. All about was the sound of a hollow wind running the land. But it wasn't the wind. It was the sound of the thaw, as what grew on the earth and clutched to the rock gave up the cold in an aching, perceptible gasp. "No," Clemmy said, reconsidering. "I guess I never was. I guess I just took that I was." Her horse scuffed at the cobbled trail. Though noon, it was now dark again, as if early in the morning, and would be light for all but another few hours of the day, as the cut where they stood was so deep and precipitous. "Wherever you are, you will always think of me," the captain said to Henry, his voice seeming to break with regret. The trail became a road rutted with thread-like rivulets, and late that day they came to the swollen 12-mile. They would have to make a dangerous crossing on a rickety footbridge, and the captain seemed to hesitate. But then he didn't. Fog enveloped their path, and Clemmy commented on how strange it was, the cold and wet about her legs and ankles, while her upper body was warming to the light. The captain held the reins of the coal-black horses as they unlashed their bundles and shouldered them. First Clemmy and then Henry embraced the old man, and then they turned and made their crossing over the swaying bridge that would soon be washed away with the melt. "Don't look down," she said, as if it were something she'd heard and now was telling him. When they reached the other side, Henry looked back. The captain was still there, astride a coal-black horse, the other two in hand. He raised his other hand, stretching forward his arm. Henry made the slightest of gestures, a nod in the captain's direction, and the captain stood in his stirrups, his old body arched in fierce salute. They went to live in the city, and Clemmy took a job working at the Veterans Hospital, where they got their cast-off towels and bedding and soap. She also saved for Henry the newspapers and magazines and books that were left behind. It was near impossible to imagine not being in the mountains, but in the city the earth became the land at Henry's feet. To the west he could see what lay between himself and the horizon, and it was without hollow, valley, defile, ravine, or stony turret. The mountains were never far away, but the sight of the city was like something